Hello everyone, my name is Owain on the channel and this is my brother.
Hey.
So today we will be reviewing each of the games that were in our top 5 favourite video games list. So obviously we made a video a little bit ago talking about our top 5 favourite video games.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing now a series of videos, each one discussing 2 of our favourite video games in each. And this video is kind of the beginning of that.
Yes, so for each video we'll be going over a game for each person and talking more in depth of the reason why we like that game.
So, you're going first?
Yeah, so because it's the start of this little series, I thought that I would start off with my very first game, which is Crash Bandicoot. So in the last review we did, I said Crash Bandicoot 3. But the reason that I got to Crash Bandicoot in the first place was the very original game that came out.
So it'll be good. Well, this will kind of be like going throughout the entire franchise, but mainly the third game.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think it's just a quick summary. I did explain this before. That originally wasn't intended for me. It was actually intended for our mother.
Yes.
From our grandfather, and unfortunately, she didn't care for gaming.
Didn't like it.
Yeah.
No.
So gave it to me, and then the whole world of video gaming just sort of opened up from there. So one was great. It was platforming, tore my hair out multiple times when I died and had to go all the way back. Second one was, another, again, great game, and it followed up with more interesting levels and characters to fight and, interact with. And the third one, which I thought was my favourite out of the original trilogy that Naughty Dog did, was Crash Bandicoot Warp, which introduced characters like Uka Uka, the evil dark mask, brother to Uka Aku Aku.
So, obviously we've both played the Crash games.
Yeah.
But for the sake of structure and for the video, I'm just going to act like I've never played it before, and so I'll just ask you questions about the game. So, to start off, what is like the story of Crash Bandicoot? Okay,
what do you mean Crash 1 or Crash 3 now warped?
We'll go with each of the trilogies. Let's start with the first one.
Well, the first one is just Crash is like a failed experiment from Cortex, who's the villain of the Crash series, and he escapes the castle, but he needs to return back there to save Torna, who's his girlfriend.
Okay, and then what about the second one?
Second one is where Cortex is actually using Crash to gather crystals to create a weapon to take over the world.
Yes, and then the third one, which you said was the best.
Yes, so that is where basically Cortex has a master called Uka Uka, who is the evil mask, and he returns to basically tell Cortex, what are you playing at? You've just spent 2 games, failing. And so he steps in to try and, take over everything and uses the time twister machine invented by Entropy.
Okay, and also, do you think that Crash 3 was harder than Crash 4?
Oh God, probably not, no, except for one level to do with a time trial, and that is Hog Ride. Platinuming that time trial was probably the bane of that entire game, honestly.
But would you say that the Crash 4 was the hardest?
I would say Crash 4 was probably the hardest one, I think, because it's been, 2 decades now, 20 years since, give or take. Since Crash 3, so obviously they've had more time to put in different new types of mechanics and stuff like that.
Yes.
And new abilities.
So then obviously you have all the different gameplay styles for the Crash universe. So could you explain them? What kind of different gameplay styles do you have opposed to just the platforming?
So, the actual, abilities that you have and stuff like that.
Yes.
So, you have the simple, jumping and spinning, which is your attack. You even, as the games evolved, you had sliding and running. Running shoes was used for, time trials, because you could go back and repeat the levels, which I think Crash 3, especially back then, did that I liked, was you could go back to previous levels, not just to collect the gems as well, but to do time trials, which you get the time relics, and then that actually helped you progress into the game as well. That unlocked more levels later on, especially if you had the gold and platinum ones, which was a nice way to go back to previous levels, but to do it faster. So running shoes was used for that. You had things like the Wumpa Bazooka, which made certain hazards a lot easier to deal with.
I always liked the concept of the Wumpa Bazooka.
Yeah, well, it's easier to deal with hazards like nitro crates that are in your way, or enemies throwing, beakers or flaming pots at you and stuff like that. So I think that was kind of a cool thing. You had like the massive spinning tornado, which if you used it right, you could like jump and then use it and you can like glide over large distances. So what they did was between every single game that they made, they sort of evolved it by putting in more abilities for you to use to overcome other hazards you would deal with.
And then I also meant by the comment I also made was different gameplay styles, as in things like the vehicle levels.
Oh.
Not even just exclusive to Crash 3, but throughout all of the things, because I know some of them really made you angry.
Yeah, well, you had like in the first one you'll always have like the hog that you ride on. That was always funny and it's all right now. It's easy to deal with. The second one you had like Polar, which is sort of like the hog you had in the first. Once you ride on Polar, you had a little speed boost that you can button mash to get over certain obstacles, and and you also had the jetpack as well, actually, which is kind of cool.
I
The
forgot
space
about
one,
that.
yeah, I think you do. Like, I think I do forget about that. That was actually introduced in the second game. But the jetpack was quite cool. It takes a bit to get used to the controls because the maneuverability around the lasers and stuff is kind of weird, but you do get used to it, and I thought that was cool to have one in space. And then third one offers like underwater sections, so you have like Crash's little sea glide thing which you go underwater. You also have the bike. You have to race against the other cars to get the crystal.
Yes, who could forget that one?
It's fun, but dear God, the turning on that thing is unbelievably awful. But mainly because of the time trial. It's not because of going for the crystal. It's just the first hog ride level I had to do. I had to do it for a time trial, and I wanted to get platinum on it, and it took me like 4 hours to do.
They also had the jet board in
They did, yeah. They did have a jet board.
They brought that and Polar back for Crash 4, and obviously you didn't like Polar at first in Crash 4, did you?
It wasn't I didn't like Polar, it was because of the fact that in Crash 4 it was difficult because you had to get these things called insane relics, and to get them you had to destroy every single crate in the level without dying once. If you die, just start it all over again. And Polar was at the last section of a really long level. And so because you can't exactly turn around and go back to collect the crate, if you missed a crate, you just went past it. Too late, go back. You have to do it all over again. Great, that's another 10 minutes of my life gone. So there was that, but no, you had jetboard levels. You have even interact with Coco. You can play as Coco and do her sections as well. You have little like spaceships that she can use to fight bosses like Engine in the third one, and the jet ski that she uses as well.
Oh yeah, she does use a jet ski. Oh yeah.
Because you go against in between all the pirate ships and stuff like that to avoid hazards and everything.
I actually forgot
and the seagull that for some reason attacks me every now and then. There's a seagull in there, and when you get close enough to it, it'll pick you up and fly you off away, and I'm like, what?
Okay, would you say then that Crash 3 is the biggest game out of all the games, as in terms of introducing the most story concepts and characters?
I think so. I guess in the story sense, yes. Especially back then, that's why I'm sort of picking it now, because I'm trying to refer to like I played it, over 20 years ago, how it was then. And when they introduced characters like Entropy and Ooga Ooga that set like the stage for like a bigger story, then yeah, I would say the third one is quite big.
And would you say that it was difficult as well, the third game? Mainly with like the bosses, would you say those were
Tiny was alright. You could even cheese him actually if you just went onto the sides and avoid all the lions he just like charges at you. Dingo Dar was pretty easy as well. Entropy as a kid, for some reason I had problems with. I don't know why, but I think it was something to do with the not the homing rockets. It was the timings on the lasers that kept coming backwards and forwards or side to side, and I just got the timings wrong. Engine was a unique boss fight because you're using a spaceship with Coco to destroy all the components off. And Cortex, I remember Cortex, he was difficult. Now this is what I'm talking about 20 years ago now, because of all the mines he just left on you, and you had both Aku Aku and Ooga Ooga fighting in the middle, constantly moving around. So you have to avoid them, not to get killed by them, and all the mines that Cortex leaves behind. And by the way, he's shooting at you with his ray gun.
Yeah, so, but obviously that game could have had the most challenging boss fights in Crash. I mean, you could even count Rusty Rollers as his own boss fight.
Yeah,
considering how much you hated it.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Crash is such a big universe, and that's going into Crash Twinsanity and loads of other spin-offs like that they did later on. So, no, but that's my reason for Crash 3. It had, it was fantastic. It opened up the world for me for video gaming. Crash 3 opened up the story to it. It had a lot more abilities and a lot of different hazards, and the story with more interesting characters to get behind. And the music was fantastic as well. I'll always listen to it sometimes, especially Jetboard levels or very iconic ones as well.
And just before I finish, would you say that some of the things that were introduced in the third game would return as future plot lines with things like the crystals?
Yeah, I would say so. Crystals, I mean, they didn't add them in Crash 4, but they could use them as another way, as another mechanic to get in the game, because gems you just get from getting crates or finding hidden ones and stuff like that. Crystals they could bring back in some other form to gather later on, but who knows? We'll have to wait until the next Crash game comes out.
Okay, so I believe it's my turn now.
Yes. So what is your game that you have picked?
The game that I have picked is Game Builder Garage.
Okay.
So I don't think I'll be able to go into nearly as much depth as you did because this game doesn't have a story to it.
Okay, so what is it about then?
Basically, it's about you using different kinds of, sentient computer parts to make your own video games.
Okay.
You have 5 levels that are tutorials for making each game. So you have a multiplayer game, a car racing game, and the final one was a platformer, which is the only one I wanted to get to. But they're locked behind something where you have to complete the one before to do the one that you want to do. So it took about a week or two before I could actually do the tutorial that I wanted to do to find out how to do platformers.
Okay.
But that's pretty much what the game has to offer. It's literally just creating your own games.
Okay. So what kind of games did you make then?
I made a few Marvel ones.
Okay.
I made an Iron Man one, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four. I also made a Bendy one and a Crash Bandicoot one. I was really proud of that one actually.
Okay.
Because I remember making you play that one.
Yeah, I think I remember playing that one. Yeah, that was a while ago.
What else? I made a Sonic one.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember, but it's been so long ago since I played the game.
So, with all these things that you have in the game then, you can build all these things and stuff like that. You say there's no story to it.
No story.
But there is a multiplayer side to it.
Yes, you can make games that you can play with up to 2 people. And then you two can get to do things like fight each other or compete to get the most of this.
Right.
So I remember before Crash Team Rumble came out, I tried making my own one. That was very simple. I never finished it because I kind of lost interest. But it was essentially you played as Cortex. One person played as Cortex, the other as Crash, and you had to try and collect all the Wumpa fruit before the timer ran out, and then you'd win. But I realised that you couldn't it was literally just, it didn't matter if one person got this amount of Wumpa fruit and the other person didn't, and whoever got the most won. It was just that, as long as the Wumpa fruit was gone at the end, then you win. So it didn't really matter about competing.
Okay.
It was more so just working together.
Okay, and are you still playing it now?
No, I think we sold it a bit ago because I had stopped playing it. I think I started playing other games. I can't remember.
Just saw more that you saw kind of grew out of it then, or not even as much that, but maybe because I remember there was that other game as well that you wanted to talk about, which was Dreams. Because I remember maybe you saw that as a sort of different version of creating games, maybe.
As far as I take it, Game Builder Garage is a simpler version of Dreams. Because obviously we can get to grip with Dreams at all.
Yeah.
But Game Builder Garage is a lot more simpler just by simplifying it down to just several building blocks, each with different abilities. One could move objects, one could play music, one was like your character, one was like the buttons on the controller.
Right, okay. And was there, so the style of the game then, because you say blocks and all that, like, was it like a Minecraft blocky game? Like, what kind of engine? How in-depth, was the game in terms of creating stuff?
It was very in-depth. It did have a limit on how many building blocks you could put in the game and how many connections. Sorry, I've got a cold. And how many connections that you could have, like linking up all the different blocks. So there was a limit. I think it was about like maybe 500 or so. So you could make quite in-depth game, but not, that in-depth.
Okay.
And as for like the graphics, they were, I wouldn't say they were as blocky as Minecraft, but they were still blocky.
Okay.
It was like, like those stick kind of action figure things that look like they're made of blocks. They're like sticky things on the ends that you can like use to stick to walls and stuff.
Yeah, I think I know the ones, yeah.
Well, that's kind of how the game looked in
Okay.
terms of like how it was all shaped. Even the characters you play as look the same as that. It's like the addition of a nose and eyes.
And do you think, you may like return to the game one day? I know you say you've sold it and stuff, but do you think, there's some kind of like reason to, go back and play again? Or like, is there going to be, have they announced like there's going to be like a sequel to like a more up-to-date version of the game?
Okay, so as far as I'm aware, they haven't like announced some kind of sequel. And as for coming back and returning to the game, I mean, it's entirely possible, never say never, but I wouldn't go back to it now, especially since there are other games, which we will get to in the rest of this little series, that I prefer to this specific one.
Okay.
That I'm playing a lot more of now.
Yeah. And how long ago since this game was, out anyway? Because it sounds like it's been out a while.
I think it was out during lockdown, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
I can't.
Because I remember that time being a lot of Animal Crossing.
Yeah, I think it was just after lockdown had ended was when that game came out.
Right, okay.
Well, we had first kind of like, when the hype for Animal Crossing started to settle down a tiny bit.
Maybe you saw from Animal Crossing, like, the creative side of gaming. Like, you can go around and build stuff and create whatever you want to. Maybe you saw that as, like, another way to create things.
Yeah, probably.
Would you say that's, I don't know, that might have been the reason for it. Would you like to talk about anything else about the game?
I don't think I have anything, but before we go, I just want to know, what would you rate then Crash 3 out of 10? So we do our top 10.
Well, it's in my top 5 for a reason, so I would have to give it a 10.
As for like the whole series in general, since obviously it's what introduced you to gaming.
Yeah, 10 as well, because at the end of the day, it will always be, to me, the biggest platformer out there. I started with it, and every game that they launched, especially from Naughty Dog, you had 1, 2, and 3, and CTR, which was the racing game. They got better and better, so it'll always be a 10 for me for Crash. And you had things like Twin Sanity and Crash, the Wrath of Cortex and stuff like that. Now Crash Bandicoot 4, which is now an actual direct sequel to that, so it'll always be a 10.
I'd probably give my Game Builder Garage maybe an 8.5, because the thing is that I enjoyed it, but it's been a while since I've played it, so I wouldn't really have a new take on it since then. So I'm also going off of like old feelings for the game as opposed to like more up-to-date ones.
Okay.
So yeah, an 8.5 I'd probably say for my game.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
I always have a different opinion, as the years go past and looking back on games.
Yes.
Alright,
so
that's going to be it then on our channel today. So I hope you all enjoyed. Please feel free to leave down in the comments what your favourite games are. Very interested to hear. And until the next one, we shall catch you later. Bye-bye.
Ta-da!